The night was colder than any James had known. The icy wind cut through the valley, shaking the walls of his tent. The ground shivered with distant echoes of battle, though no weapon fired nearby. The silence was heavy, broken only by the soft rattle of canvas against the poles. James sat alone inside. His breath fogged the air. His hands held close to a small heating unit, but it gave little comfort. The storm outside howled like a predator, circling but never showing itself. He had survived the day, but the night pressed harder against his spirit. For hours he had been alone. His unit had scattered across the frozen ridges. Some were lost. Some never answered the radio again. In this lonely darkness, James wondered if he was the last one left alive. Then, a sound broke through the wind. At first, it was faint. A scrape against the snow. Then another. Something moved outside his tent. His hand went to his rifle at once. His heart pounded in his chest. He waited, listening, every nerve sharp. The sound grew closer. It was not the shuffle of falling snow. It was footsteps. Careful, uneven, dragging as if the walker carried a heavy burden. James raised his weapon, pointing at the flap of the tent. The shadow came to the entrance. A pause. Then a voice spoke. "Please! Let me in." The words were not human. The accent was strange. The tone was soft, almost broken. James froze. His grip on the rifle tightened. An alien voice in the middle of the night. Alone and unguarded. This was no chance meeting. "Who is there?" James demanded. The voice trembled. "I am cold. I am hurt. Please." A wave of suspicion struck him. Could this be a trick? The enemy was clever. They used spies. They used lies. He had heard stories of soldiers who opened their tents to strangers and never woke again. Yet the voice did not sound like a soldier. It carried pain, fear, and a strange kind of desperation. James waited. The silence stretched longer. The wind screamed around the tent, filling the pause. Finally, he lowered the weapon slightly. "Step inside," he said, but his voice was cold. The flap moved. A figure stumbled in. She was not human. Her skin was pale with a faint glow, as if light lived beneath the surface. Her hair, silver and tangled, clung to her face, wet with frost. She shivered, arms wrapped tight around her thin frame. James pointed to the ground near the heater. "Sit." She obeyed without argument. Her movements were slow, weak, and filled with exhaustion. She sat close to the heater, hands trembling as she reached for warmth. For a moment, the only sound was her breath, heavy and strained. James did not lower his rifle. He watched her every move. Her eyes lifted to his. They were bright, like shards of crystal. There was no malice in them, only hunger for warmth and perhaps something deeper. "Your people left you?" James asked. She nodded faintly. "Yes. They feared the storm. They fled. I was wounded. They did not wait." Her voice cracked, but James felt no comfort in her words. He knew the battlefield too well. Lies flowed easily when survival demanded them. Still, he felt a pull in his chest. She was so fragile, shivering with each breath. Enemy or not, she looked close to death. He reached for a spare blanket and tossed it to her. She caught it weakly, then wrapped herself in it. A soft sigh escaped her lips as warmth began to return. "Why should I trust you?" James asked. Her eyes did not leave his. "I ask for nothing but a chance to live this night." The fire inside the small heater flickered, throwing shadows across the tent walls. James lowered his weapon a little more, but his heart remained guarded. Minutes passed. The storm roared louder outside, but inside the tent, silence grew between them. A silence filled with questions neither dared to ask. James studied her carefully. The way she avoided his gaze when he pressed for details. The way her hands clutched the blanket as if it was more than comfort, as if it was a shield. Something about her was hidden, buried under her fragile act. He leaned back slowly, never fully at ease. His soldier's instinct whispered danger, but another voice, deep within, whispered something else. Perhaps this was not a chance encounter. Perhaps the night had delivered him more than just a stranger seeking warmth. The cold pressed harder outside. The storm showed no mercy. Yet inside the tent, two enemies shared one fragile flame. And in that fragile flame, something was waiting. Something James could not yet name. The alien woman sat wrapped in the blanket, close to the heater. The small flame painted her pale skin with orange light. Her eyes reflected the fire, glowing like shards of ice touched by heat. She looked weak, yet James could not shake the feeling that weakness was only part of the truth. He kept his rifle within reach. His body remained tense. His mind replayed the sounds of footsteps in the snow, the way she had begged for entry. She might be telling the truth, or she might be playing a role. Soldiers were taught never to trust what appeared in the dark. Minutes stretched into long, uneasy silence. The storm outside grew harsher, rattling the thin walls of the tent. Every gust of wind sounded like a warning. At last she spoke. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "You fight alone?" James did not answer. His eyes narrowed, waiting. She shifted slightly. Her body trembled as if the cold still clung to her bones. "Why do you not fear the night? Why do you not fear being hunted?" James let the silence linger. Then he said, "I do fear. But fear does not stop me." Her gaze lingered on him. "Your kind is strange. Always standing. Always resisting." James studied her face. She looked fragile, yet her words carried curiosity, almost fascination. He did not lower his guard, but his thoughts twisted. Why would she ask such questions now, when her body begged for rest? "You talk like you came here to study me," James said. Her lips pressed tightly, as if holding back words. She turned her eyes to the fire instead of answering. The silence returned, heavier than before. James watched her every breath. He thought of his comrades lost in the snow. He thought of the war that burned across worlds. He thought of the simple fact that he was giving warmth to someone who, by law and duty, was his enemy. Finally, she spoke again. "Do you believe all of your people would do the same? If it were them, would they let me live for even one night?" James frowned. "Not all. Some would have left you outside. Some would have killed you the moment they saw your face." She tilted her head, her silver hair falling across her cheek. "But not you." "I am not them," James said firmly. Her eyes softened, though the flicker of mystery never left them. For a moment, she looked less like a soldier and more like a lost soul. Yet James's instinct kept him sharp. He noticed how she kept her cloak close to her chest, as if guarding something hidden. He noticed how her hands, though shaking, sometimes stilled too perfectly, as though she was listening for something beyond the storm. The heater hissed faintly as it burned its last measure of fuel. Shadows shifted against the fabric walls. James felt the weight of time pressing on them both. He wanted to ask her more questions. He wanted to know why she had wandered to his tent. But something in her eyes warned him that the answer would not come easily. Then, her voice broke the silence again. "Why do you fight this war, human?" The words were sharp. Too direct. Too deliberate. James hesitated. Then he spoke with a steady voice. "We fight because we must. Because if we do not, others will take what is ours. We fight because we protect each other. That is what makes us human." Her eyes locked on his. They shimmered with emotion he could not name. Perhaps sorrow. Perhaps doubt. She leaned forward slightly, her voice softer now. "Protect each other? Even strangers? Even enemies?" James's breath slowed. His rifle was still close, yet his hand no longer gripped it so tightly. "Even enemies, if they are cold and dying." The firelight wavered between them. Something shifted in the air. It was no longer only suspicion. It was no longer only survival. It was something heavier, more dangerous, and more human than war itself. But the tension remained. James leaned back against the tent wall. His eyes never left her. Rest if you can. Tomorrow will not be kinder. She pulled the blanket closer, curling into its warmth. For the first time, her breathing slowed, though her eyes did not close. She watched him still, as if she feared what would happen if she let sleep take her. Outside, the storm howled louder, carrying with it the cries of distant war. Inside, the two sat together in silence, neither friend nor foe. Only two lives bound by the thin canvas of a fragile shelter. And as the night grew deeper, James felt a truth press against his chest. She was not only here for warmth. She had come with a hidden reason. The blanket hid her shivers, but it could not hide the weight of secrets. And James knew, before the night ended, those secrets would come for him. The storm outside raged without mercy. Snow piled against the tent walls, pressing inward with the weight of the night. The heater gave off its last weak glow, casting long shadows that danced across the faces of the two who shared this fragile shelter. James did not sleep. His eyes remained on the alien woman. She had curled into the blanket, yet he noticed the way her breathing shifted whenever he moved. She was not as weak as she appeared. Her body trembled from cold, but her eyes stayed sharp, always watching, always waiting. Finally, she broke the silence. Her voice was calm now, steadier than before. "Human, I want to ask you something." James said nothing. He waited, hand close to his rifle. "Why do your people fight so hard? Even when death surrounds you? Even when the odds are against you? Why do you refuse to surrender?" The question caught James off guard. It was too precise, too deliberate, like the voice of someone searching for answers, not comfort. He studied her carefully. "Why do you want to know?" Her lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile, though her eyes remained cold. "Because I have seen humans bleed, yet still they rise again. I have seen your armies broken, yet still they march forward. I do not understand it. My people say it is madness. But I wonder if it is something more." James exhaled slowly. His voice was steady, but his heart carried weight. "It is simple. We fight because we protect each other. We fight because no one else will stand for us if we fall. We fight because our lives have meaning, even in the darkest hour." She tilted her head, her crystal-like eyes reflecting the firelight. "Meaning. That word. It is strange to me." The way she said it sent a chill through James. As if her people had forgotten the very idea of meaning, or perhaps had cast it away long ago. He narrowed his gaze. "You speak like someone who has come here with more than survival in mind. You speak like someone with a mission." Her silence was heavy. For a moment, only the wind howled outside. Then she whispered, "You are sharper than most." James leaned forward slightly, the rifle still between them. "What are you hiding?" She shifted under the blanket, her body curling tighter as though the question itself struck her. But her eyes betrayed her. They flickered with something fierce, something alive. Finally, she pulled her hand from beneath the cloak. Between her trembling fingers was a small object. It gleamed faintly in the firelight, a device no larger than a soldier's compass. Its surface pulsed with faint blue light. James's body stiffened. "What is that?" Her voice was steady though low. "It is a memory key. It records what I see, what I hear, what I learn." James's breath caught. His instincts screamed at him. She was not simply lost. She was not abandoned. She had come here with a reason, and now the truth was unfolding. "You are a spy," James said, his tone sharp. Her gaze did not waver. "I was sent to observe. To understand your kind. To discover the truth behind the stories told of humanity." His rifle lifted an inch higher. His eyes burned into hers. "And what truth have you found?" For the first time, her voice faltered. "That you are not like the others we have fought. You bleed, you suffer, yet you carry something we cannot name. You carry hope, even when death surrounds you." The fire between them hissed, as though the storm itself had pressed closer to listen. James felt his anger clash with something unexpected. Her words carried sincerity, yet her motives were still cloaked in shadow. "You wanted more than warmth," James said. His voice was low, dangerous. You wanted answers. Her hands tightened around the memory key. Yes. But not the answers I was trained to gather. At first, I came to prove that humans were reckless, brutal, unworthy of the stars. That was the story told by my commanders. But tonight I see something else. You share warmth even with your enemy. You protect life even when it threatens you. I needed to know if such things were true. James's chest tightened. His grip on the rifle did not ease, but his heart warred with his mind. She was his enemy, a spy who had crossed into his camp. Yet her words carried no triumph, only quiet wonder. The storm roared outside, shaking the tent, but inside the silence grew heavier. 2 lives hung suspended on the thin edge of trust. Finally, James lowered the rifle a fraction, though his eyes never softened. So you came here with hidden motives. But now you sit in my tent, sharing my fire. Tell me this. Will you use what you have learned to destroy us, or to understand us? Her hand trembled around the device. She did not answer at once. Her lips parted, but only a whisper escaped. That depends on what I choose to believe. The words cut through the firelit air like a blade. She had revealed part of her truth, yet the heart of her purpose remained hidden. James leaned back slowly, his gaze never leaving her. He knew now. This night was not about the storm. It was not about survival. It was about something far more dangerous. It was about what secrets she carried, and whether those secrets would bring humanity ruin or hope. And as the fire burned lower, James realized one thing. The night had not given him a guest. It had given him a test. The fire burned lower. The storm outside had grown so loud that it almost drowned the silence inside the tent. Almost, but not completely. Inside, the silence was sharper, heavier, and filled with something far more dangerous than wind or snow. James kept his eyes on the woman. Her hands still clutched the memory key, the device pulsing with a faint blue light. He could not look away from it. That small piece of alien technology might hold the fate of his people. Put it down, James said firmly. Her eyes lifted to his. Calm, steady, without fear. If I put it down, will you trust me? James's grip on his rifle tightened. Trust is not given. It is earned. For a long moment she did not move. Then, slowly, she placed the device on the ground beside her. The light from it dimmed, but it did not go dark. It waited, just as she did. James felt no relief. His soldier's instinct told him the danger was not gone. It had only shifted. Why carry such a thing into the storm? He asked. Her voice was quiet but sharp. Because my people needed proof. They needed to know if the stories of humans were true. Stories of strength. Stories of stubbornness. Stories of compassion. James's eyes narrowed. And what have you decided? Her lips parted, but she hesitated. I have not decided yet. That is why I am here. The tension thickened. The fire crackled, and shadows twisted across the tent walls like restless spirits. James leaned forward, lowering his rifle only slightly. You think you can decide the worth of humanity with one night? With one man? Her gaze sharpened, piercing into him. Sometimes one night is enough to see the truth. Sometimes one person shows more than an army ever could. The words struck him deeper than he expected. For a moment, James felt the weight of his own solitude. He was only one soldier in a broken war. Yet here she was, watching him as though his choices carried the measure of all humanity. But suspicion still burned in him. His eyes drifted back to her cloak. Something about the way she held it tight unsettled him. She looked weak, yet her movements were too precise. Too careful. Open your cloak, James ordered. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed again. Why? Because you are hiding something, James said coldly. If I am wrong, then prove it. For a heartbeat, she sat still. The storm howled louder, shaking the tent poles. Then, slowly, she opened the folds of her cloak. Beneath the blanket, strapped against her side, was a small blade. Its metal glimmered faintly in the firelight. Not large, but sharp enough to end a life in silence. James's rifle rose again. His voice was hard. So this is how you earn trust? Her eyes did not flinch. It was protection. Nothing more. You came here armed, carrying a device that spies on my kind, James said, his tone cutting like the cold wind. You ask for shelter, and you expect me to believe it is only protection? Her voice lowered, steady but edged with something fragile. Would you walk into an enemy camp unarmed? Would you face the night storm with nothing? James did not answer. His jaw tightened. He hated the truth in her words, but he hated the blade even more. The fire hissed as another piece of fuel collapsed. Shadows stretched long across her face. For the first time, James saw something shift in her expression. The calm mask faltered. Behind her crystal eyes, a flicker of fear appeared. She whispered, "If I meant to kill you, I would have done it already." The words hung heavy. James's rifle remained raised, but his heart wavered. She was right. She had been close enough. She had moments when his guard had slipped. Yet she had not struck. The silence between them grew like a wall, thick and suffocating. Neither trusted the other. Yet neither acted to end the standoff. Finally, James spoke, his voice quiet but unyielding. "If you want to live through this night, the blade stays on the ground." Her hand moved slowly. She unstrapped the weapon, placed it beside the memory key, and pushed both toward the firelight where he could see them clearly. For the first time, James let his rifle lower, though only slightly. His shoulders remained tense, his eyes sharp. The woman's voice softened. "I did not come to kill you, James. I came to see you." The words struck him harder than the sight of the blade. His heart beat faster, though his face remained hard. "Why me?" "Because," she whispered, "your people say you never abandon one another. I wanted to see if that was true. Even with me. Even with your enemy." James said nothing. He sat in silence, the fire between them, the storm outside, and the weight of her words pressing against his chest. She had stripped herself of weapon and device, yet the greatest danger in the tent was not the blade, nor the memory key. It was the growing pull between them. A pull of trust, fragile and dangerous. A pull that might decide whether the night ended in blood, or in something else entirely. The storm raged without pause. Snow hammered the earth, and wind screamed across the valley. The tent shook, yet it still held. Inside, the fire had burned down to a faint glow, a thin line of warmth against the endless cold. James sat with his rifle close. The alien woman remained across from him, the blanket tight around her body. Between them, on the ground, lay the blade and the memory key. Both were silent, but both carried weight heavier than steel. Neither spoke for a long time. The silence pressed down until James finally broke it. His voice was low, steady, and edged with command. "Tell me why you are really here." Her crystal eyes lifted to his. For the first time, she did not look away. "I told you. I was sent to watch. To record. To learn what makes your people dangerous." James leaned forward slightly. His hand rested near the rifle, but he did not raise it. "That is not the whole truth. You could have hidden in the snow. You could have waited for my death tomorrow. Instead, you came to my tent. You asked for warmth. You asked questions. Why?" The firelight flickered across her pale face. Her lips parted, then closed again. She seemed to struggle with the answer. Finally, she spoke. "Because I wanted to see if the stories were lies." "What stories?" James asked. Her voice lowered. "The stories told by my people. Stories of humans who burn everything they touch. Stories of savages who fight without reason, who destroy because they cannot build. They called you monsters. But when I saw your army fight, I saw something else." James's chest tightened. "And what did you see?" She leaned forward, her voice trembling though her eyes remained sharp. "I saw soldiers carrying their wounded when it slowed them down. I saw men and women shielding each other even as the enemy cut them down. I saw you fight not only for survival, but for each other. My people do not do this. We fight for power. We fight because we are told to. But you fight for something more. Her words struck James like a blade, though not with pain. With weight. With a truth that carried both pride and sorrow. You think compassion makes us weak? James said. She shook her head. No. I think it makes you dangerous in a way my people cannot understand. And that is why I was sent. To learn if that danger was real. The memory key pulsed faintly in the firelight, as though it listened to every word. James's eyes locked on it. So every word I say, every act I make, is being sent back to your people. Her voice dropped. Yes. Or it was meant to. But not anymore. James frowned. What do you mean? She drew a slow breath, her fingers curling into the blanket. I stopped transmitting hours ago. What is in that key is only mine to carry. What I choose to reveal is my decision now. The silence in the tent grew heavy. James felt his heart pound harder. She was still an enemy. She still carried proof of who and what he was. But she had also admitted to disobeying her own orders. Her voice broke through his storm of thoughts. I needed to see if humanity was worth fear, or worth something else. James's jaw clenched. He searched her eyes for deception, but found none. Only conflict. Only the weight of someone caught between duty and something far deeper. You came here as a spy, James said. His voice was hard, but quieter now. But what are you now? Her lips pressed together. Her eyes glistened faintly in the firelight. For a moment, she looked fragile again. Then she whispered, Now I am someone who does not know which side I belong to. The words hung between them. Outside, the storm cried against the earth, but inside the tent the storm was greater. James lowered his rifle slowly, but not completely. His voice carried the edge of command, yet beneath it was something warmer. If you are my enemy, then this night ends with death. If you are not, then tell me what you truly want. Her hands trembled. She looked at the blade, then at the memory key, and finally back at James. I want to know if humanity is hope, or if humanity is only war. I want to know which truth to carry when I leave this place. Her words cut through the air like steel. She was no longer hiding. No longer playing the part of weakness. She had revealed the heart of her mission, and now the weight of her choice loomed larger than the storm outside. James leaned back slowly, his gaze steady, his chest heavy. He realized that this night was no longer about survival. It was about a decision that could shape the war itself. She had come with other intentions. She had come to test humanity, to test him. And now her test was almost complete. The storm outside began to quiet, but the silence inside the tent was heavier than ever. The alien woman sat close to the fire, her blanket drawn tight, her eyes locked on James. The blade and the memory key still lay between them, glowing faintly in the dying firelight. James studied her. She had confessed her purpose. She had confessed her doubt. She was no longer only a stranger seeking warmth. She was a question made flesh, a test brought into his tent. Her voice broke the silence. Soft, trembling, yet filled with urgency. Tell me, James. Why do humans fight with such fire in their hearts? Why do you endure pain that would break others? Why do you still rise, even when everything is taken from you? James let the silence linger. He thought of the battles he had seen. He thought of his comrades who carried the wounded, even as the enemy rained fire upon them. He thought of faces he would never see again, lives that had ended so others could live. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, but heavy with emotion. Because we fight for more than ourselves. We fight for family. For friends. For the people who stand beside us. For those who cannot stand at all. We fight not because we love war, but because we love life. Her crystal eyes widened slightly. Life. Even when it costs your own? Yes, James answered firmly. Even then. Because a life given to protect another is not wasted. That is what it means to be human. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her eyes searched his face as though trying to understand something she had never known. The fire reflected in her gaze, mixing with something new, something that looked almost like sorrow. James leaned closer, his voice quieter now. Your people may think we are reckless. They may think we are dangerous because we do not surrender easily. But the truth is simpler. We fight for each other. That is our strength. That is why we endure. She lowered her head. Her hands gripped the blanket, trembling. My people do not fight for each other. We fight for command. For power. For fear of punishment. There is no bond like the one you speak of. We abandoned it long ago. Her words cracked, heavy with regret. For a moment, she looked small, like a child lost in the storm. James felt something shift in his chest. His suspicion was still alive, but his anger faded. In its place grew something else. Something fragile, but powerful. He set his rifle aside. The sound of metal against the ground echoed in the small tent. Her head lifted at once, her eyes sharp with surprise. You trust me? She whispered. James held her gaze. Not yet. But I choose to show you what trust looks like. That is how we build it. One choice at a time. Her breath caught. Her eyes shimmered with unspoken emotion. For the first time since she entered his tent, she seemed unsure of herself. The mask of the spy, the mask of the soldier, began to crack. Why? She asked. Why risk yourself for me? I could still betray you. James's voice softened. Because sometimes, showing trust is the only way to create it. If I treat you only as an enemy, then you will always remain one. But if I show you the truth of who we are, maybe you will see something different. The fire flickered. The storm outside eased into a low howl. Inside, the space between them grew heavier, not with suspicion, but with something deeper. Her hands fell slowly from the blanket. She looked at him, truly looked, as though searching for lies and finding none. A faint tremor passed through her lips before she whispered, Perhaps I was sent to destroy you. But now I think I was sent to understand you. The words filled the tent like a quiet thunder. James felt them strike deep within him. For the first time, he saw not a spy, not an enemy, but someone who stood at the edge of change. He nodded slowly. Then understand this. Humanity's greatest weapon is not strength. It is not fire. It is not war. It is love. We fight because we cannot let go of those we care for. We endure because we choose hope, even when it hurts. Her eyes glistened, catching the firelight. Her voice trembled. And you would give this truth even to me? James's voice was steady. Even to you. The silence stretched. The storm faded into the distance. Only the faint crackle of fire and the sound of their breaths remained. For the first time since she entered, the weight of suspicion began to lift. In its place, something fragile but undeniable grew. A seed of trust. A seed of something more. And as dawn threatened to break beyond the storm, James knew this night had not been about survival at all. It had been about humanity's answer. The storm finally broke. The wind grew weaker, and the endless cry of snow began to fade. Outside, the first light of dawn stretched across the frozen valley. The night had ended, but its shadow still lingered inside the tent. James sat across from the alien woman. Between them, the fire had burned low, but its glow still carried warmth. The blade and the memory key remained on the ground, silent witnesses to everything that had passed. For hours they had spoken, fought with words, and balanced between suspicion and trust. Now the night was gone, and with it came the weight of choice. The woman's eyes lifted slowly to meet his. Her crystal gaze shimmered, reflecting the faint light of morning. The storm is over, she whispered. James nodded. His voice was steady, though his chest felt heavy. Yes. But the war is not. Her hands curled tighter around the blanket. You are right. The war will continue. My people will keep fighting yours. They will not stop because of one night. James leaned forward. His voice was low but firm. And what about you? Will you keep fighting me? Her lips trembled. She glanced at the memory key. The faint blue light pulsed softly, as if calling to her. If I carry this back, they will use it. They will say you are dangerous. They will say you are monsters who fight without fear. And the war will burn even hotter. James's hand brushed over the weapon by his side, though he did not raise it. Then why not destroy it? Her eyes widened, as if the thought had never been spoken aloud before. She looked at him, uncertain. If I destroy it, I betray my people. I betray my duty. James's voice was quiet, but sharp with truth. Or maybe you save more than you betray. The silence stretched. The weight of her decision filled the air thicker than the storm ever had. Her hands shook as she reached for the memory key. She held it in her palm, staring at the faint glow. Her breath trembled. Then, with one sudden motion, she threw it into the dying fire. The device hissed as the flames consumed it. The light flickered, then vanished. Only ash remained. James's eyes narrowed in shock, but he said nothing. He only watched her, waiting. Her voice broke the silence. I have made my choice. I will not let them use you as a weapon against your own truth. I will not let them twist what I have seen. James felt his chest tighten. She had chosen betrayal of her own people for the sake of something she had found in him, in this night, in humanity itself. Slowly, he set his rifle aside completely. For the first time, his hands were empty. He leaned closer, his voice carrying warmth that surprised even him. Why? Her eyes softened, filled with something fragile but fierce. Because I see now what you are. You are not monsters. You are not savages. You are human. And if my people cannot see that, then I will not help them blind themselves further. The fire crackled softly between them. Outside, the dawn stretched brighter, painting the snow in silver light. Inside, the air felt different. Lighter. War was still waiting, but here, in this fragile space, something new had been born. James reached forward slowly. His hand brushed against hers, steady and firm. She did not pull away. Her fingers, cold and trembling, tightened around his. For a moment neither spoke. Their silence was not heavy now, but filled with something unspoken, something alive. Finally, James whispered, Maybe this war will burn the stars. Maybe it will take everything. But if there is even one chance for trust, even one chance for peace, then it begins like this. Her lips curved faintly, a smile fragile but real. Then let it begin here. The fire between them faded into embers. Yet the warmth it had given remained, carried now in the fragile bond between two enemies who had chosen something different. As the dawn rose higher, James stood and pulled open the tent flap. Cold air rushed in, sharp but clear. The valley lay covered in white, silent after the storm. He looked back at her. She rose slowly, still wrapped in the blanket, her silver hair shining in the light. She stepped beside him, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The war had not ended. The danger had not passed. But something stronger than fear had been born in that tent. Trust. Perhaps fragile. Perhaps fleeting. But trust all the same. And for the first time since the war began, James believed that humanity's greatest victory would not be won with weapons, but with the choice to see an enemy as something more.